Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm having some slight technical difficulties, so I'm doing this across two computers, so we'll see how it goes. I've just asked the people at home on Zoom whether they can hear me. So I'm just going to wait to see if, yes, we've got thumbs up. Fantastic. So we've got video, we've got audio, and we might have slides. We'll see how it goes. So yeah, good morning. I'm really happy to be invited to speak today, and I'm going to be talking about something called visible difference, which might not be a phrase you've come across before unless you work in the same sector as me. How are you going to work? Yes. So I am a dance movement psychotherapist, and I bring that up because it's a really interesting approach to therapy. So it makes use of traditional talking therapies, it makes use of creative arts approaches, and also somatic and embodied approaches. So it feels really relevant for the topic we're going to be looking at, which is people's embodied experience. My background is quite wide-ranging. I've worked in adult mental health, children and young people services, children's hospice, dementia services, Parkinson's and long-term health conditions, and that's across kind of Greater London area and then South East, Kent and Sussex. My particular area of interest is working with people that have been affected by cancer and its treatments, so living with the long-term effects of having something about your body, your embodied identity being altered. And for the past year and a half, I've been working for a charity called Changing Faces. So we are a UK-wide charity. We cover all 4 nations, and our head office is based here in London. So for today, my very ambitious goals are to give you an instruction in what we mean by the term visible difference, the different kind of layers of how that can affect a person on an individual, relational and social level, and then a little bit about what Changing Faces do and why we take that approach. So, just to arrive back from the break, and also because there is going to be some language in one of the clips I'm going to show you, there's going to be some abusive language, so just to have that kind of awareness in advance. So we're going to start with a grounding exercise, if that's okay, and everyone at home can join in too. So I'm going to start by inviting you to see if you can make yourself 10% more comfortable where you're sitting. That might be having a bit of a wriggle, taking a glass of water, taking a layer off, putting a layer on, whatever you need to do to get yourself that little bit more comfortable sitting in your seat. And I'm going to invite you to either lower your gaze or maybe just soften your focus, so you don't need to close your eyes at all. And we're just going to take a couple of minutes to have some reflection, so drawing your attention inwards. So I'm going to invite you to just start with a few breaths. So inhale, you can choose to inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth, whatever feels comfortable, whatever helps you to arrive in your body, in your seat. So I'm going to ask you to run your attention very gently over your body and see if you can find a place where your attention naturally rests in a part of your body that you feel some warm, positive feelings towards. So a sense of gratitude or a sense of comfort. We're not looking for a part of the body that has any kind of mixed or controversial feelings. So if you do notice your attention being drawn to a part of the body that you don't really like, you've got a bit of a tense relationship with, just say, thanks, gonna move on, and see if you can draw your attention to a part of the body that feels quite comfortable. That might be your hands that allow you to do a hobby that you really love. It might be your mouth that allows you to taste your favorite food. Your legs that let you take your dog for a walk. Your hair that lets you express your personality. So just taking a moment as you're breathing to send a sense of gratitude or thanks to that part of your body that you've got a warm relationship with. And so as we go through, any time that any of the things that you see or hear feel a little bit challenging and you want to take a moment to retreat, you can go back to that place of gratitude in your body that you found a little bit of comfort, and reassure yourself that you are safe in your body this morning. And when you're ready, just allowing your gaze to lift up again. You can take a look around the room. And if you do make eye contact with anyone, you can choose if you want to acknowledge them. So just taking a little moment to breathe, lift your head and look up around you. Do let me know as we're going along whether my voice is reaching. I'm trying really hard not to force it, but I can't gauge how it is at the back of the room or how it is online. I will try to project. So we're going to start with some definitions around the area of visible difference. So some other words or phrases that you may be more familiar with is disfigurement, deformity, birth defect. So this is medicalized language and it is factually accurate. But what it does is it allows for a judgment to come in, because this language can also be used to describe a person as disfigured, deformed, defective. So we just need to be really careful about whether we're talking about a condition, a medical condition, or a person. So in terms of like person first language, we or people that are affected by a condition, a disfiguring condition, might be more commonly be describing themselves as a person with a visible difference or a person with an altered opinion, an altered appearance. And generally speaking, there are two types of visible difference. So it may be a congenital condition, which is present from birth. So that might be a cleft lip, a cleft palate, a birthmark. So some skin conditions can be present from birth, and limb differences are normally present from birth. And then everything else, that's everything that happens to you through the course of your lifetime, is something that you might acquire. So that could be burns or scars from an accident or a condition that develops over your life. So some skin conditions will develop in infancy or some develop in adulthood. So Changing Faces, as an organisation, we define a visible difference as a mark, a scar, or a condition that affects either your face or your body. We can have any number of medical conditions that fall into the area of visible difference. It might be something that affects the feel, the look, or the pigmentation of the skin. So vitiligo is a loss of pigmentation. Melasma is a darkening, so an increase in the pigmentation. Could be psoriasis, eczema, could be acne or acne scars, and birthmarks, which, as I said, are normally present from birth. It could be the result of an accident or a trauma. Someone may have burns, limb loss, eye loss, or it could be the result of an illness that someone's experienced. or the treatment of someone's illness, such as surgery or having chemotherapy. And then there's also rarer genetic conditions that can affect skeletons, can affect the shape of the skull. Neurofibromatosis can distort the shape of the body and the head. And venous malformations can affect like the face and the color and the shape of the face. So quite a lot of information there. Maybe some conditions you're familiar with, maybe some conditions you've never heard of and possibly will never hear of again, especially the really rarer ones. And that's just a little snapshot of some of the people that we work with. These are our media champions and campaigners. So anytime there is a story about visible difference or disfiguring conditions in the press, you're likely to see one of our media champions and campaigners. So what a visible difference condition isn't is body image dissatisfaction or body image distress. So obviously we know bodies come in a wide range of shapes and sizes, function, ability, and people that have distress around their body image have a really valid experience. But generally speaking, these are people whose body falls into like the normal spectrum of how we expect a body to look, but it's not living up to their own standards of how they feel they should look, or more likely it's not living up to their internalized societal expectations. So these are people that you may come across that have really, really real distress, but you know, they're too tall, they're too short, then they're not pretty enough, and they're not attractive enough to the people they would like to be in a relationship with. Their eyes are too close together, too far apart, their nose is the wrong shape, their jawline is the wrong shape. So this is what we would consider as like a body dysmorphic disorder. And not something that Changing Faces work with, because we work with the experience of people that can be observably different by other people when they go out into the world and have other people react to them. Whereas people with distorted body image are maybe feeling as though people are reacting to them because of their appearance, but maybe that's not quite what's going on. Does that kind of make sense, that distinction? Cool. So I've got a pop quiz in a second, which is going to need your mobile phones. Do people have their phones with them? So I'm going to get you to go to a web page called menti.com, and I'm going to pop it in the chat box here. So based on some research we did before COVID, we found the prevalence to be roughly just under 1 in 5 people in the UK self-identify as having a condition which affects their appearance. So a burn, a scar, a disfiguring condition of some type. So based on the descriptions I've just shared, I wonder if you could go onto the voting system and based on those definitions, vote whether you yourself would consider that you have a visible difference. It is anonymous, so no one will see your responses. And I'm going to see if I can get the results to come up. We shall see. The code, yeah, the code is, I'm going to try and share it from here. Yes, so 288 39656.
My internet went for minutes.
Oh.
Can you cut the code again?
Yeah, absolutely. It was very ambitious of me to try and do something internet based. So we've got 30 people that have voted, or 31 people, it's still loading. So who's good at statistics? Where are we roughly with those proportions? Is that maybe 1 in 3.5? So slightly under our UK survey, but around what we'd expect to see. Anyone surprised that there are as many people that self-identify as having a condition that affects their appearance? So that gives us a bit of an idea that we're going to encounter people in our work that feel affected by something that is altering their appearance and that's altering the way that they move through the world. So going back to that idea of how we experience ourselves and our sense of self and our physical body, the first relationship we have is with ourselves. So our individual relationship to our physical body and our sense of self. So one of the myths that I wanted to bring in at the beginning is this idea that the prominence, the type of difference, the size, the visibility has a direct correlation with how much distress it may cause us. And that's quite a common assumption that people may make. And people may make it about themselves as well. So they may say things like, it's such a small thing, why does it affect me so much? Because they've internalized that idea that the severity should correlate with their distress. And there might be someone that has a really distinctive disfiguring condition, and they may have a really fulfilling job, a really loving family, and a really good sense of self-esteem, whereas someone else may have an almost undetectable scar on their jawline, and it causes them a huge amount of distress. It's the first thing they think about when they wake up in the morning. Whenever they look in the mirror, it's the only thing they can see. So a better indicator of how much distress a visible difference condition might cause a person is their internal base level of resilience, their self-esteem, and the messages they've received from other people, so loved ones, strangers, and the media. Effectively, kind of what we're talking about here is a form of a marginalized identity, and we know that can affect people in different ways. So there might be the reactions they receive from strangers, the reactions they receive maybe from within their own community, whether they feel a sense of community with others or not. And then with themselves, they may also have any form of internalized prejudice. So in other marginalized identities, that might come out as maybe internalized homophobia or internalized racism, where they've really taken on those societal messages. So our individual sense of self can be impacted by our self-esteem, our self-worth, whether we believe that we are worthy of love and affection from others, whether we're able to accept that in. As I said, our baseline of internal resilience, whether you are just a naturally optimistic or resilient person. And then the other thing that can affect your sense of self is whether the person is able to accept the part of the body that isn't living up to their standards or has been altered in some way, because that will dictate whether you have a fragmented or an integrated sense of self. And your sense of self can be fragmented for lots of different reasons. But because we're talking about this from an embodied perspective, this could be an actual part of the body that someone wants to disown or distance themselves from. So a part of their appearance that they're not ready to own and embrace. So some of the things that can impact the level or how well someone can adjust to their appearance or their changed appearance or their altered body can be to do with timing. So whether they have always had a body that looks like this, whether it has been changed, whether it came on really suddenly, or it's something that happened gradually over a number of years. The other thing to do with timing that can affect it is whether it's a static or a fluctuating condition. If someone doesn't know how their appearance is going to be affected from one day to the next, that can be a really destabilizing experience. The cause, whether it is as a result of an accident or a traumatic experience or an illness, that can really impact how well someone is able to integrate that part of the body back into their identity. Whether they have a sense of loss or grief, either of their previous appearance or maybe this idealized version of their head that they're holding in mind, and also how they became aware that they did look different. So we're not necessarily born knowing that we look different from other people. We tend to find that out when we're told by others or we're told by society. So 1 in 3 people with a visible difference say that they experience depression, sadness, anxiety as a direct result of their appearance. So that's slightly higher than the general population, where we kind of accept that 1 in 4 is the figure for that. So what kind of experiences can people have which inform how their self-esteem or their self-worth develops. So if you can go back onto your phone at all, or you can shout out, or you can write in the text box on Zoom, what kind of formative experiences can people have? Do feel free to shout out if you're not into typing. Yeah, bullying. Definitely. That's kind of the first time we come up against other people's ideas about who we are. And sometimes that can jar with who we believe we are. People's expectations, level of family support, definitely, and families' attitudes to us, how they respond to our distress. Media, for sure. Cultural standards, yeah. Upbringing, family culture, in terms of like attitudes towards how child raising, like whether that's discipline, affection styles, whether the child is validated, peer pressure, upbringing, parental presence, yeah. And in Zoom, they're talking about primary relations, so mum and dad or primary caregivers. They can really impact how a young child's sense of self is formed. Parental bullying, religion, culture, trauma. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. So yeah, external factors is all of those responses we get from people in our immediate vicinity, so family, loved ones, and that's both positive and negative. They help shape who we feel like we are. Bullying, either at school or in the workplace, media messages, responses from the general public, so how you encounter people when you go out into the world, how people react to you, and experience of being loved and accepted and validated for who you are. So that's on a relational level, which is so on a one-to-one basis, when we go out and we are interacting with people, how do they react to us? So generally this is immediate family, close friendships, parents, partners, the people whose opinion we value the most, the people that really hold a mirror up to us and kind of reflect who we believe we are. But it's also those individual interactions we have with people as we move through the world. So that might be someone that's serving you in a shop, maybe someone that you bump into at the bus stop, all of those mini interactions you have with people through the day. Biggest factor, as I said, is those immediate family relationships. And so for a person with a visible difference condition, the way that impacts on their own sense of self can be whether or not it's acknowledged or whether it's unspoken in the family home. So in the work that I do in one-to-one support with the clients that come to Changing Faces, I am often speaking to people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, where the parent has never acknowledged that the child looks different. And it becomes something that is unspoken in that family culture. So the person is well into adulthood and they don't feel as though they can even say some of the words out loud because they've been told that there's like a code of silence around their appearance or around their medical condition. On the other end of the spectrum, you could equally have parents who really celebrate their child's difference, their condition. That could be a parent of a child that has vitiligo, and the parent is able to use that as a positive quality and appreciate the beauty of the patterning of that. And whether the child or the adult feels that their feelings are validated or minimized. So from our research, we found that 40% of people with a visible difference said that their family and their loved ones don't understand how they feel about their visible difference. Because there is this idea that appearance is superficial or vain, and that people just need to get over it. So there's a lot of negative feelings going unacknowledged or being suppressed. So I'm going to attempt a clip. We'll see how this works. And I'll have to see whether the sound comes through on Zoom as well.
The first incident that I noticed at school, he was referred to as Marcus with the face because there was another child called Marcus in his year. The first thing that he really noticed was kids started to call him names.
I think the toughest time was hitting senior school, where you go from a couple of 100 children that have grown up with him to hundreds of children that are from all different areas that have never met Sam before or seen Sam or have even met anyone with a visible difference before.
The teacher had an infant assembly, and where she spoke about how David was feeling, and she showed them David's creams and dressings that he would use, let them touch them and feel them and smell them, basically, so they knew what kind of things David had to go through on a daily basis.
There was a pastoral team there, and I knew that their function was a support function. So before he went, I made contact with the school and asked to speak to the head of that pastoral team to make them aware of Sam's visible difference and to ask him to keep an eye on him and to let me know if he got any issues, but also for him to have a point of contact within that team so that he could go to if he experienced problems as well.
The advice I'd give to teachers is to look into it. If you've got somebody in your class with a visible difference, look into what resources are available, how you can help that child, and listen to them. If they're telling you that somebody's saying something nasty, they are saying something nasty. It's not that it's just a bit of banter in the playground. It's not, it's personal. So listen to the children and sort out some help. The first instance. Face.
So that's just an example of some of the campaigning work that Changing Faces have done in the past, but it does bring it home that this isn't something superficial. It can really damage a young person's experience. It can affect their attainment at school. It can affect their attendance, but it also is about challenging the culture from a young age and educating people about all forms of, I guess, discrimination. So that does kind of move us on to the last layer of our sense of self, which is our social self. It's who we are when we go out into the world and how we are received. So this is going out in public, but it's also even in the homes when we access the internet or the TV, whether we're getting any messages that validate or reject us. It's responses from strangers, it's going into the workplace, or even interviewing for jobs. And it runs the spectrum from either being ignored or avoided or being stared at, through to stigma and discrimination, right up to abuse and hate crime, purely based on someone looking out of the ordinary or looking unexpected. So from our research, 43% of people with a visible difference have experienced hostile behaviour, 38, and this is from strangers in public. 51% of people feel self-conscious or embarrassed when they go out. 38% of people have experienced being stared at, which is quite intimidating by itself. Okay, so this has some strong language, but I would encourage you to watch it because it can be quite illuminating for the experience of someone who is going out and receiving messages about them purely based on having a face or a body that looks out of the ordinary.
Hi, hun.
If I was you,
I'd kill myself.
You ugly.
That's very loud. Can I alter the volume? Is it on mine or is it on the...
What's wrong with your face?
There we go. That's a little less jarring.
You don't look like a woman. A face only a mother could love.
You look disgusting.
Looks like you've been run over by a tank.
Your face? No joke. I literally just vomited in my mouth. I thought you had to be pretty to work here.
is that contagious?
What the is that?
Get a grip, you mutant.
I see you got your Halloween costume sorted.
Straight in your face. Oh, wait a minute. You can't.
You're so ugly. I can't bear looking at you.
With a face like that, I couldn't sing you out to a customer.
Wow. What's that on your face?
Look how ugly you are. Quasimodo, freak.
Freddy Krueger.
Ugly.
Elephant man.
Monster.
You are ugly as...
Every day we get abuse because of how we look.
Why do people think that's okay?
We will fight until every person that looks different is free to walk down the street
Post online.
and live without fear.
Join us.
Together, we can stop the hate.
So I think it's really, sorry, do take a breath. That, especially how loud it was at the beginning. If you need to settle yourself again, please feel free. It is really interesting to try and think about how people get to the point where they believe that it's okay to be abusive to a stranger. And it may be that it's that sense, that threat response that is being activated when they're seeing someone that looks unusual or that looks not like them, that they are feeling threatened. And so they're going into fight or flight and they're going into abuse. So in order to get to a place where, oh, that's going to go off again, where it becomes acceptable to be abusive to someone who is not like you, we need to think about how we kind of got there through media representation and kind of societal messaging. So 36% of people have been or feel as though they've been discriminated when they've applied for jobs. So one of the people that was featured in that film has had interviews cut short, not because of his work experience or his qualifications, purely because they didn't want to employ someone that looked like him. They didn't feel comfortable. 27% of people are regularly ignored when they go into shops. So shop assistants either blank them or refuse to serve them. So thinking about media representation, messaging, What we're getting into is basically unconscious bias. So going back to the phones, what fictional characters can you think of from film, TV, or books who have a burn, a scar, a facial disfigurement, or any other kind of condition which causes them to look out of the ordinary? Strike. Oh, yes, strike. Who from Twilight has got a visible difference? I haven't seen it. So the Joker, yeah, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Deadpool, love that. Augie from Wonder, yeah, has everyone seen the film Wonder or seen the book? It's a really great example of positive representation. Deadpool has body burn scars. Tyrion Lannister. Oh, you're testing my, yeah. The dwarf, yeah. Oh, because I know there's also someone that's got a hand loss as well. Freddy Krueger, Frankenstein. So actually, you guys are doing really well in terms of positive and negative representation. Generally, what we find is that it's much easier to name characters that have a facial disfigurement who are the villain. But I'm loving Deadpool and Tyrion and Cormorant Strike. Great. So the other myth I wanted to highlight today is the myth of ugliness equating to evilness. It's something really common. It's in all of our fairy tales. It's really embedded in our culture that someone who has any sort of disfigurement or altered appearance is the one that lives in the woods, is the one that lives outside of society. And there's this idea that ugliness on the outside represents some sort of damaged soul or damaged character. So it's really closely attributed with negative. They're aggressive, evil, untrustworthy. Does that kind of resonate? And you can see how you get from there to feeling bold enough to be abusive to someone in the street. So last video, hopefully not as loud. This one is a couple of minutes long, but has a bit of more of a warmer message.
My earliest memory would probably be
Freddy Krueger,
the Joker,
Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean,
Voldemort, Scar.
Scar.
Like, he's the evil character, he's the one that's scary.
And it just showed that he was the bad guy and he wasn't really an approachable character.
Freddy Krueger was my earliest memory. I got compared to him when I was growing up.
When we show people with visible differences as villains rather than heroes,
It just kind of sets this stereotype that people who are different can be scary or mean.
they might make a snap judgment that that person is, evil or there's something negative about them.
Growing up, it's very scary because you never see someone like you in a film. You never see someone who might be different as the hero.
People with visible differences tend to have been through certain experiences that make them very, very strong.
I think it's important to have people with facial disfigurements in the movie industry because It just makes people aware of what people that live with facial disfigurements are going through, and it gives them that sort of like self-esteem, what they need in life.
It makes everything like more diverse, and it shows people who are maybe like feeling self-conscious or worried about themselves that there are people who are like them.
You know, having a visible difference or a disfigurement means not having a day off. You know, they're having their own struggles, of course, of acceptance. But often or not, it's not their own acceptance, it's society's acceptance that is the problem. How do you integrate yourself into work, into dating, into schools? If you had a positive character, I think some of these things will just make it easier to deal with. So I think somebody who's going to make a film with somebody with a visible difference, I think you should look at the person as a whole.
We're the same, like you can have Princess with a scar, you can have like the person maybe being saved with a birthmark or something, and there's nothing different.
And it would be quite nice to have a hero or a good person with a visible difference.
Or even just the smaller characters, just like maybe it's a family and there's a child with a birthmark, things like that.
And really bring out the best in them. So we're just showing this person in a really positive light.
I am not your villain.
I am not your villain.
I am not your villain.
I'm not your villain.
I am not your villain.
So whoever said Deadpool in the chat, I'm stealing that for next time because that's my favourite. Interesting. So if we're thinking about our face, our appearance, our body as a representation of ourselves when we go out and encounter other people, really need to think about whether any of the judgments we're making about people are informed by them looking outside of what we would think to be like the norm, and make sure that we're not equating a scar, a disfigurement with a negative characteristic. So we get a lot of people to write their stories for our website, and one of the stories I read recently was a young Black man who had been going out with some friends, and he had been turned away from a nightclub because he has facial scarring. And the train of thought that went through the bouncer's mind was, you have a facial scar, therefore that must be connected to violence, that could be criminal activity, gang activity. And the young man in question had been in an accident. I think it might have been a car accident. So a traumatic experience for him, not related to criminal activity in any way, but that was following through into his life, and people were making a snap judgment about what kind of character he might have. So in terms of unconscious bias, this is a real impact. It can affect people's employment opportunities. It can affect school attainment for children, where teachers maybe have equated a facial disfigurement with, a lower ability. So the child is being held back from their full potential. So for positive media representation, as I said, I'm definitely going to put Deadpool on here for next time. So Tom Burke, who plays Cormorant Strike on the BBC, he has a cleft lip. He does play a character with limb loss, and he doesn't have limb loss, which is, not great if we're looking for representation. But none of his characters have ever had the cleft lip specifically referenced, which is fantastic, because you want it to be anecdotal rather than the defining aspect of their character. Nikki Lilly is a YouTuber, and she has her own series on CBBC, and that's an episode where she met Katie Piper, who's the burn survivor who set up her own foundation. Beth is a young actress who is playing a character called Jean on the CBBC adaptation of Mallory Towers. Adam Pearson is currently on Celebrity MasterChef, or I haven't seen it, I think it might have been gone now. I don't know if he won. If anyone's watching Celebrity MasterChef, I don't know how he did. And that's Matt Fraser, who is thalidomide affected and has limb difference, and that's a still from when he was on Holby City. So in terms of the organisation I work for, Changing Faces, we also have this kind of like three-pronged attack style. So starting from the social level, really trying to affect societal opinions, so campaigning, political lobbying, and the last video I showed you is part of our campaign with the BFI to one of the things they did was to contact the makers of the James Bond franchise to try and get them to stop using villains with facial scarring. We also have brand partnerships. The biggest one we have is with Avon. So a lot of our media champions have been featured as models in Avon catalogues, just showing how makeup looks on different skin textures as well as different skin tones. And we've also done some campaigning against making abuse against people based on their visible difference recognised as a hate crime. On the interpersonal relational level, we have education resources and training opportunities for teachers, assembly and classroom resources, training for health and social care professionals, so that when someone uses services, they're not having to overcome those initial responses and to try and lessen their experience of being discriminated against in services. And then we also do customer service training for retail staff, restaurant staff, so people aren't having that really negative experience when they just try to carry out their day-to-day activities. And so then on the individual level, for the person, to support them with their sense of self, we have two main services. So we do offer skin camouflage service for people that want to minimise or disguise their visible difference. That's across England and Scotland. And we have that service for all skin tones, and we offer that for the face and the body. And then where I work is the emotional wellbeing service, and we cover all 4 nations of the UK. All of our services are free and available from birth, right through to adolescence and into adulthood. So we can support people at any significant milestone. We have free resources on our website, a phone line that's open Monday to Friday, peer support programs, and one-to-one psychological counselling support. So in terms of what you can do, if you are interested in learning more about this area, we have an allyship course that's available on email. So if you sign up to that, you would get a series of emails come through with activities that you can explore. And we also have a health and social care professionals mailing list where you can keep up to date with our activities, our campaigns, and then if you do have a service user, a client that you're working with that needs additional support, there's information on how you can refer them either for the skin camouflage or for the counselling and the wellbeing services. That's me done.
There's a question about the number of people that you are helping on average in a year, or anything?
I can find that out. I don't have it off the top of my head.
The tens, the thousands,
Somewhere in between. So it's definitely in the hundreds. For the emotional wellbeing and counselling service, is in the hundreds. We are a relatively small charity, and we're not very well known for being the UK's leading charity for visible difference, because the idea that visible difference is a significant issue isn't that well known. We tend to focus on the areas of discrimination that are more widely recognised in society and also more widely accepted, because we are still combating this idea that worrying about appearance is superficial, is vain, and we just need to get over it. So the question was the number of people, or the proportion of people that we reach through changing faces. Sorry, I forgot to repeat it for Zoom. Any other questions? Hi.
Hi, thank you very much. What advice can you give us that starts a conversation? I guess sometimes people might be tempted to pretend it's not there.
Yeah.
And obviously the person with the absolutely there all the time.
Yes.
So how can we do the right thing about acknowledging it without making it kind of only thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Zoom, the question was about how do we start conversations, how do we acknowledge it as part of their experience without making it their sole identity. And I guess you probably already know how to do that, because you ask about facets of people's lived experience all the time. You ask them about their experience of race, about their experience of religion. This is their experience of living in their body and how that affects how they interact with others, and also how it affects how others interact with them. So it's starting from a place of curiosity and openness, and giving those signals that you're a safe person to have that conversation with, and that you're not going to jump to your own conclusions. So it's being non-judgmental, isn't it? It's really the core of what you're doing. Does that answer? Oh, sorry, hi. Yeah, that's really a great, so when you're talking with younger children or with parents about broaching those conversations. So we do have quite a bit of research, quite a bit of advice on our website specifically about speaking to young people, and advice for parents speaking to young people. It's really tricky, because what you don't want to do is attribute a judgment or to tell the child how they should feel about, because they may not have any feelings about it at all. They might just go, oh yeah, that's just how my arm looks. And they only receive the message that it's a bad thing when other people react negatively. Some of the advice we give on our website is about having like prep questions. So when someone inevitably asks a question innocently, or makes a rude question, or makes a rude comment, what is your kind of pre-prepared response going to be? Like, what are you going to pull out of your pocket? And it might be, I don't want to talk about that, that's rude, I'm going to leave the conversation. Or depending on how they feel, coming up with their own explanation. Go, yeah, this is my cool arm, it looks like this is my superpower. Or something more neutral if you don't want to like go down the toxic positivity route. Is that kind of what you were getting at? Roughly, how many people are in the adult social work area, and how many are more veering towards like child and young people and family social work? So adults? There's no, it's all set. Okay. So is that a decision you make afterwards? Ah, interesting. Hi.
Is it something that you just kind of very used to it, or is it something you might sort of never really understand what it was, just in terms of thinking back?
Yeah. Yeah, so the question is about what language to use and whether people in the community would recognise the term visible difference. It tends to vary depending on whether they identify as like part of the community or not. So people that come to us, and it also depends how much of a patient service user they are, because they may be well used to being navigated through services, and they may use medical language about themselves in the way that, you know, people that are really heavy service users sometimes adopt that language. So people might say, I've got a condition, they might describe the condition rather than the effect it has on them. When we ever do research with people in our community, they say overwhelmingly they prefer the term visible difference to something like disfigurement, because there's less of a value judgment on it. But yeah, people may not know what you're talking about, is the honest truth. So you may want to talk specifically about the body part, the face, the skin, whatever it is. Yeah, I can't give you a catch-all answer for that. From Zoom, the question is there any support for carers of those with visible difference experiencing discrimination by association, or psychological support? So for Changing Faces specifically, we offer support for parents, direct support for parents of 0 to 5-year-olds, and then kind of family support for 6 to 18-year-olds. For partners, no, it's not something we currently offer, but yeah, there could equally be kind of discrimination by association, as you describe it. Like they may get abuse about, oh, why are you with them? They're really ugly. What does that say about you? So it is a relational issue. And also siblings of children with a condition can experience the same level of bullying. Thank you for your question, Abigail. Hi.
One more question for me. So last year we had this day focused on eating disorders, but we spoke a lot about this advertising industry, a huge multi-billion industry that is in a way here to make all of us feel uncomfortable about the way we look, and as if the way we look constantly requires work. We need all kinds of pharmaceutical things, we need all kinds of alterations, we need diets, we need all kinds of, and all of us, in a way, feel really often very uncomfortable about how we look. And so I guess I'm just wondering, from your organization's perspective, when you need to allocate resources, how do you decide if would you give service to anyone, or would you say, well, I'm sorry, but your pimple is it's too insignificant? Because you might just as well have lots of people who feel very uncomfortable about how they look, but they look better than all of us.
Yeah.
So what do you do there?
Absolutely. I can't paraphrase that question for Zoom. So I guess the question is, like, if everyone is affected by messages about their appearance when they're interacting with individuals or interacting with the world, or even just relating to themselves, if they're feeling a level of discomfort in their physical body, where do you draw the line? Where is a visible difference, and where is like the normal human experience of having a body? Is that kind of the question? So I guess it goes back to what I was saying at the top about that severity myth, that it doesn't need to be severe. So the way I kind of categorize it in my mind is whether it is observable by others, whether if it's a medical condition, whether it could be diagnosable as something that is an altered body or a different body, regardless of whether it is permanently on display, like on the end of your nose, whether it's concealable on the trunk or the legs. That's not so relevant. Yes, everyone has a level of discomfort with some part of their appearance, and it's teasing apart whether it is body image distress or whether it is the result of experiencing life in a body that doesn't conform to beauty standards or societal standards. So it has that kind of individual, relational and social element, all three of those elements. That makes sense. Anyone else, or shall I pause? Hi.
Sorry, you talk about hate crime. Do you think that the visible differences covered adequately into the Equality Act 2010? Maybe
so the question is relating to hate crime and the Equality Act. So disability under the Equality Act is really, it's a high benchmark to meet. Many visible difference conditions don't impact someone's functioning or they don't impact someone's mobility. If it's significant enough that, so Adam, for example, with neurofibromatosis, it has a significant impact on the form and shape of his skull. So that would qualify as disability under Equality Acts. But yes, with hate crime, for me, it's more about understanding the intention. So is someone attacking you because they don't like you as a person, or are they attacking you because they don't like one of your traits? Which I guess is where the Equality Act comes in terms of protected characteristics. I don't know is the answer. But it's a good question. Great.
I would love to hear just I don't know, a bit more about the kind of work that you do with people who...
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah.
Have I misjudged the time? I thought I was rushing at the end.
We have...
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I'd be really happy to share some of the work in that case. And just to give a little bit more of a picture about how something as simple as our appearance or the face that we show to the world can have quite a significant impact. So as well as managing the service for the UK, I have the privilege of seeing clients as well for short-term psychotherapy. And interestingly, the work we do is either video or telephone. So we're in the unique position of not knowing what the person on the other end of the telephone looks like, apart from how they choose to describe their appearance to us. And they might choose to play down or over-exaggerate what their appearance or how they perceive their appearance to be different. And we might never know, which I think adds a really interesting dimension to the work. So I primarily work with people who are 18 to 70. So the two examples I gave of someone in their 40s and someone in their 60s who came to me as the first person they had ever told that they have a visible difference. And it's something they'd gone through their entire lives concealing or allowing to go unspoken. So one person had a skeletal deformity, I guess, in a factual way. It was a deformity, and one person had a prosthetic eye, and they had both navigated intimate relationships, work, friendships, without ever naming a big part of their identity. So it is almost going through life masking or hiding some aspects. I guess the analogy is almost like being in the closet about having a condition, but it's something that they thought about every single day, affected every single interaction they had with someone, but it's something they concealed as part of their everyday life. So quite a sobering thought to go through life without ever fully admitting or acknowledging who you are to the people that are closest to you. In terms of social exclusion, which is another really interesting area, quite a high proportion of people that come through to the counselling and therapy service, understandably, are the people that have the highest impact on their functioning, on their emotions. People that have been out of work for several decades, so not working and also not claiming benefits because they couldn't bring themselves to go to the job centre and explain why they weren't working. So really caught in a situation of complete social exclusion, financial exclusion, having to rely on family members, and living this really small life. So not being able to say to people why they couldn't go to the pub when their friends invited them. As I said, not being able to go to the job centre to claim unemployment benefit, not even being able to apply for a job, because it has the impact of making your world really small. One person I spoke to, their life had been reduced to the size of the bedsit they were living in. So it has a really dramatic impact on people for something that we would perceive as superficial. I guess any questions around the types of people that I might work with? And the severity myth does bear out. I do video work as well, so sometimes I'm speaking to people face to face over Zoom, and they will be describing how dramatic their difference is and what impact it has, and it is literally the first thing they think about when they wake up in the morning. And I will be in relationship with these people over several weeks, and I can't detect anything over the video screen. So sometimes it is just being able to give that person a sense of acceptance and validation. If any of you are Carl Rogers fans, do we let social work straight trainees read Carl Rogers? So unconditional positive regards, so that sense that someone can bring their whole self and it will be accepted and acknowledged and honoured, even when they bring the uglier sides of them. Yeah, read Carl Rogers. So all of our, we only have employed staff. We used to have volunteers that would run the skin camouflage service, but we made the decision to have only paid staff, just to really acknowledge the level of expertise and the quality of the service that we were offering. Not to downplay any services that are run on a voluntary basis, but we really wanted to acknowledge the importance of the work we're doing. So we have fully kind of paid full-time staff. So in the wellbeing service, we take people from social work, nursing, mental health nursing, teachers, psychologists, counsellors and therapists. So really broad range. And we do that deliberately because we want to acknowledge that this is something that impacts every aspect of someone's life and someone's functioning. because you cannot escape the body that you're navigating the world in. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Break for lunch. First of all, again, thank you very much. Can we send you questions if we have more questions later
Yes,
on?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Everyone would like to take some photos. So those who don't want to be photographed, maybe move to one side. And there is a register. I'll pass it on. What you want me